The base is dropped. Georgia won a championship. I'm freaked out by all of this. What's going on? I'm also on very, very little sleep, so bear with me today. And as you knew yesterday, I wasn't feeling great to begin with. So I'm not in as bad a shape as Georgia's radio announcer, Scott Howard, was last night. Man, he was hurting. Really sick. It's a national championship game. He gave everything he had to the point that, like, in the post game, he's like, I got nothing. I can't do anything. I got nothing to say. I can't talk. It was a lot of fun to watch that for Georgia fans. I am not going to sing fight songs, and I am not going to talk smack to everybody else, like has happened all throughout this college football season and all throughout every other season since 1980. And yes, there's some people are going to need some new jokes because those are done, and we will see what happens. It was a lot of fun last night, and I know we were kind of going on in our private chat last night, and it was a stressful game for a long stretch of it, but a lot of fun to see Georgia finally.
It had 2019 U.S. Open Cup vibes for me.
Yeah, it did. It did. It was a wild experience watching this thing. You know, I went to UGA. I've had family who, you know, I grew up as a Georgia fan. I had a cousin who played at Georgia in the 70s. And I have a lot of family who went to Georgia, more that didn't go to Georgia, some that, you know, didn't go to college, couldn't afford to go to college, and they still grew up Georgia fans. And that's the thing that is, I think, a little unique compared to some other schools around, is that you do have a fan base that is very large and very statewide, and you've got a mix of people who went to the school, people who didn't go to the school, people who went to other schools. I mean, there's a lot of Georgia State and Georgia Southern. It's students who, you know, grew up Georgia fans and maybe couldn't get into Georgia. A lot of friends who I grew up with, who I watched Georgia games with as a kid, that, you know, didn't go to Georgia, couldn't get in for whatever reason, couldn't afford to go. It doesn't take anything away from it. And these are the things that were all like kind of flashing through my head last night watching this thing, because I know I watched it in 1980. I was almost 4 years old. Well, 1981, when the actual game was. I was almost 4 years old. I know I watched it because, I mean, we watched every game that we could when I was a little kid. I remember specifically the game 2 years later when Georgia lost to Penn State in the championship. I do remember that because I was like almost 6, and I remember crying a lot. Of course, watched all the other, you know, more recent close calls, et cetera, et cetera. It's just, you know, I thought back to family members and watching games with my dad and all of that stuff. So it was very, very cool last night. So if I'm scatterbrained and tired and forgetful and all over the place today, yeah, you're just going to have to bear with it.
So, hey, let's bring this back to the fact that Georgia is apparently now the state of champions.
Yeah, Georgia, can we never say the curse thing again? I mean, can it completely go away? It shouldn't have ever been a thing.
I promise you, it's not going to completely go away as long as the Falcons are the Falcons. But for everyone else, yes, it's just the Falcons. It's a Falcon specific thing now.
Right.
Because, yeah, apparently this is I would love to believe that the state of Georgia and the city of Atlanta are collectively entering a golden age of, like, hey, remember when Boston sports were those lovable losers, and then like 2004 through current happened? It'd be great if that happened. But to your point, Jason, and to your emotion about it, it's the same way I felt. And so I can relate to how you're feeling, because I was 5 when the 95 World Series happened, and like had just started playing T-ball. And just really started getting into the sport hardcore. They win. I vaguely remember it. And then now you get this title in 2021 with the World Series one, where I'm like fully cognizant of it.
Yeah.
Also, shout out to my kid, who was both she was one and a half, almost 2 when Atlanta United won a championship. And then now you have these two, which, you know, she doesn't really care about college football. But, you know, she's seen now 3 championships in her life, and she's not really going to have a memory of any of them. Good luck, kid.
Yeah, I mean, it's just it's so different, and this idea that a lot of people still have they still had it after. I mean, you had it about Atlanta not being a great soccer town until Atlanta won MLS Cup and filled the stadium and all the different things that they've done, and you still have people who will occasionally fall back on that old narrative. Just like you get the people who pull out the note cards from the 80s, out of their Rolodex of Atlanta's a bad sports town. No, it's not, and nothing was ever cursed. You just had teams that got close and couldn't do it. You had teams that were poorly managed. You had bad luck along the way at times, but that really can't be uttered anymore. You can talk about what the Hawks need to do to win an NBA title. You can talk about what the Falcons need to do to win a Super Bowl, but the idea of Atlanta being a bad sports town or being cursed, and yes, I know it really rankles some people about talking about Georgia and talking about Atlanta and the same thing. Sorry, get over it. There's really nothing else I can tell you because you're never going to accept it and it's never going to go away. So you're just going to have to deal. Yeah, it's okay. And kids are growing up a little bit differently than I did in the 80s, where the Braves were bad. The Falcons were maybe worse. I don't know. That's debatable. The Hawks were at least fun with Dominique, but they would get close and never get any further than that. It's really cool to see, and it's a lot of excitement. And look, I think what it does to bring it back around to the soccer world, it is soccer down here after all. It puts pressure on Atlanta United. It puts good pressure on teams. The Braves did as well, because expectations change. And Atlanta United's expectations changed when they had that initial success and when they won in year 2 and won more trophies in year 3. There is a very high expectation. I talked about that with Glenn Davis on his show in the Austin radio market. Healthy pressure is a good thing. I think there does need to be a touch of realism at times about situations and how hard it is to do these things, because we go from everything's cursed to, no, you should win every game 5-0 and never lose. Can we find a middle ground where expected to be competitive and win things, but not? Well, John, then again, as I say many times, just saying that, that's how it's going to be, it's still wrong. There is a level. I know. I'm just saying, I'm never going to be the one to be like, that's just how people are going to be. No, I'm still going to say it's wrong. It's incorrect, because it sets yourself up for disappointment. And I hate that. That's like the antithesis of being a fan to me. Get wrapped up in it. It hurts when you get close and you lose. Then you can fully celebrate when you win. If you're always waiting for a shoe to drop because it's not quite good enough, or it's not quite this, or that's not the fan experience I ever want to have. And it's the one that I really try hard not to have. And I don't want anybody else to have it. So yeah, I'll call it out. I know people are going to do it. I know it's how people are going to be, but I still don't like it. And I'm still going to say it's wrong.
And for me, full disclosure, I went to Blackshear, Georgia the year that Stetson Bennett was a senior, and caught up with him and caught up with his head coach at the time, Sean Pender, and got to see firsthand. And I have known ever since his high school career that the kid could sling it. And I could never understand how he was being ignored. And that's the word that I'll use when it came to the next level for him. And then him going to Jones County Junior College in Mississippi to prove once again, that he was worth the slinging that we had all seen on tape, and then coming back and all this kind of stuff. And when you have these kinds of individuals, stand-up family, stand-up kid, and he gets to have a moment like this, I can't be any happier for someone like Stet, who I've seen grow and evolve and knew that he had this in him. And, we get a chance today to see that in Major League Soccer as well. Who are going to be those prospects that get to sit there and say, hey, you're taking a shot with me, and I'll show you what I can do. So, I mean, it's been fun for me to sit here and look at Southeast Bullock and Islands and Savannah Christian and Pace Academy and all these kids come to the fore in a moment like this. And I can't be happier for someone like Stetson, who I've known had this as a part of his skill set. And to have a moment like this, I can't be happier for someone like that.
And who everybody wanted to run to the bench, even in the third quarter.
Mm-hmm.
Even after everything the kid did all season long, everything that he proved, third quarter, you're still getting very prominent people saying, JT Daniels, JT Daniels, JT Daniels. Who won all the games this year? It was that Bennett kid. The stat that blew my mind about it, and this does kind of tie back into what we're going to see later today. The Super Draft is it's in a weird place, and I think expectations need to be measured with it. But also, as we've seen, a guy like Tajon Buchanan comes out of the Super Draft after playing in college and is headed to play in Europe for a multi-million-dollar deal. So dreams do come true out of this thing. But Stetson Bennett, I think, I don't have the stat in front of me. It was like out of quarterbacks, and I can't remember what the cutoff was, who have won the national championship, there hadn't been anybody below, I think, a 19 ranking overall in their recruiting class. He was a 2-star walk-on and was like rated 1,000 something. I mean, some absurd thing. He was number 5 on the depth chart last year and stuck with it. And full credit to Kirby Smart for sticking with him. You know, I mean, that's the thing. That was his guy. He came up big throughout the season. He came up big last night. And there are guys who do that. Now, okay, look, this is college, and Stetson Bennett's not going to have a pro career, I wouldn't imagine, although who knows with that kid. I'm not counting him out anytime soon. But you're going to see guys today in the Super Draft, and there's some really interesting stories in it because of where college soccer is today. You've got guys at big programs who had long careers and won things and, maybe can step right into a team and contribute. There are some of those guys. Last year, there weren't many that stepped in and contributed straight away. There were only 2 players who played over 500 minutes in their rookie season. There are guys who are going to take a little bit of time. There are guys who maybe you're going to change position at the next level. That's really one of the recurring things through all of the Super Draft prep that I went through is guys who are going to convert positionally. Wingers who are going to convert to outside backs. Some outside backs who are going to convert to center back. Guys are going to drop further in the field. The number 1 pick, who could be Ben Bender out of Maryland, is somebody who's probably going to have to drop a little bit deeper. He's probably not going to play as a 10 at the pro level. You're not going to see probably any 10s come out of this draft because where do teams usually go spend their money? Internationally on a creative playmaker, on a number 10. You're not going to get those guys out of college. So the guys who were those playmakers in college are going to have to show they can play both ways. They're going to have to be solid defensively, and they're going to have to show that they can bring some things to it. But I look at what Bruce Arena has done specifically with New England and how he has really built a lot of the core of a team that was the best an MLS regular season has ever seen. A lot of that core came from the draft. And you added the difference makers on top of it. But that back line especially was all through the draft. With DeJuan Jones, with Brandon Bye, who were converted attackers into outside backs, with Andrew Farrell, who was an outside back converted to a center back, and Kessler from Virginia, a fairly recent draft pick. It can be done. And there are guys who can help teams in this. I think you saw Dallas in the move they made yesterday, which was a really interesting one. The Dom Dwyer experiment in Dallas lasted a few minutes. Not really any intention there outside of Dallas getting the number 3 pick in the draft today. I would assume they have somebody in mind that they think can help them straight away. Also, Toronto keeps their buyout for probably Josie Altidore, although who knows? Maybe they can unload him. Really weird little MLS trade yesterday. But, Jarrett, I think coming into this today with the Super Draft, Atlanta picks 19. There are some teams who I think can get some players that will help them in 2022 in this draft ahead of Atlanta. 19 is a really tricky one to call because I don't think Atlanta needs a ton of different things in the draft that they're going to be able to get out of this. If the right player is there or somebody they think can develop, I think they'll grab them at 19. If there's not a player at a position or the right player, they don't want to reach too far, I wouldn't be shocked if they trade down. A lot of it just depends on what happens in front of them.
I mean, I'm not shocked, especially after what we saw Philadelphia do. I'm not shocked if anyone just says, what if we just didn't with the draft entirely? Like, what if we can get a bit of money for these players and then go from there? What if we can get an international slot or something? Not that I don't think the value's high enough for that, but
yeah, that's the tricky thing is I don't know when you really dig into it. If you do your scouting and yes, get a little lucky at times, there are players who can help you win things in this league, in this draft. Julian Gressel is one that we saw firsthand here in Atlanta. Miles Robinson, obviously now. Jack Elliott with Philadelphia, a 4th round pick. They're out there. You're going to have to really dig on the scouting, and you're going to have to get a little lucky. It's an opportunity to add. If somebody gives you a really good offer for a pick, yes, I think that conversation comes up. But I disagree with the mentality of just, we're not going to draft, we're just going to trade everybody because we don't want to deal with this. I disagree with that. I think you're wasting an opportunity.
I don't see it as a matter of we don't want to deal with this personally. I see it as a matter of we don't see anything that automatically makes us better and we can get assets for a draft pick. I don't see it as I think
Philadelphia has done that. Yeah, I'm with you.
I disagree with their philosophy on it then. If that's why they're doing it, I'm going to disagree with their philosophy. But the process of, I don't think there's anyone here that's going to make us better that we can't use internally, so let's get a little extra cash. I'm fine with that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I think Philadelphia has kind of made a strategy of not wanting to do the draft. And okay, if you're getting enough of a return for it, cool. But it's just another opportunity to add somebody if they fit what you're doing. I mean, let's go back to 2020 and give guys a couple of years to see what they've done. Jack Mayer, I think, will be a starter in Nashville this year. Dylan Nealis was just moved to the Red Bulls in a trade from Miami. Daryl Dike was just sold for a lot of money. I don't think there is a Daryl Dike in this draft. I don't think there is a guy like that. I think there's a lot of solid guys, like along the lines of a Henry Kessler, who was picked 6th in 2020. I think there's a lot of guys like that can be starters, that can be defensive players more often than not. I think that's where you're really going to find value here. And I think it's really going to come potentially from some of those outside backs that are attacking outside backs because of the position conversion. But even going for a little bit further at 11, Alistair Johnston, he netted Nashville $1 million in allocation money, John. Like, when you look at that, you're not going to get anywhere near that for an 11th round draft pick as a pick. But if you do it correctly, you can flip it if you scout the right player and if you give them the opportunity to develop.
Yep. Find the guy that's right for you. Make sure that you can mold that individual into what your overall philosophy is. And if he has that season, like Alistair Johnston did, then you get that 7-figure allocation return. That was when that number popped up, when it first popped up, I think we were all stunned that Alistair Johnston was worth a 7-figure return. But we're seeing right now where value can be placed with players, especially if you want to max them out immediately instead of, once again, we always talk about making sure that if that opportunity is there, you always have to listen. Nashville listened, and they got that 7 figures in return. And I think that you mentioned the Dom Dwyer trade, and I was going to ask you about this, is that this was almost like an NBA kind of a deal where you sit there and you take a player and it's like, all right, we don't want the player, but we'll take him off your hands and do all these kind of other machinations. I can't think of the last time that we had a deal like this when it comes to draft day. And I thought that was an interesting play where you get that NBA vibe coming as well.
Yeah, some different comments on the Twitch pitch we're going to hit really quick before we get Dylan Butler on at 9:30. Burns says he thinks the way Atlanta's going, signing the homegrowns, and Justin Garces was added to the roster yesterday. They'll not need the draft. 100% cool with that. Again, like I don't think you have to make that decision. It doesn't mean you go into the draft expecting to get a starter, but if you have a draft pick and it's a decent one and somebody hasn't offered you a decent return on it ahead of time, see what you can get. Do your scouting. You never know. There are some interesting players in this draft that I'm really curious to see where they go, who left school early, or in one player's case, didn't go to college and have played professionally. That adds a little wrinkle. That's an interesting one. One of those kids is at Chattanooga FC in Necita from Dalton. He won the Georgia High School Championship last spring. Damian Rodriguez, who didn't go to college, but he is in the draft. Haven't seen him pop up on any of the big boards or any of the potential picks, but if you're in Atlanta United, and yes, you are going to sign a lot of homegrowns because you're developing players, and yes, you're probably not going to be expecting these guys to come in and contribute straight away. You go add a guy from Georgia who has gotten some professional experience under his belt. Why not? Bring him into camp and see what you got. Wildchara said, only one draft pick currently on the roster, Miles Robinson. But you do have to remember what you got in return for another draft pick in Julian Gressel, and what you got in return for another draft pick, John Gallagher. So to say they're not on the roster right now is kind of washing away what you got in return for players who did well that you got out of the draft. That's very important. Also, don't forget Aidan Mcfadden either. Aidan Mcfadden is with the twos, and I think he is right on that verge of potentially earning an MLS deal this season. I'm sure probably coming into preseason, there were some very specific things that he was told to work on, Jarrett, and Aidan Mcfadden showed last year that he can get forward, that he can put in crosses from the flank as well. He can score himself, but his defensive ability converting into that outside back from a college attacker, it's definitely something to watch. He could potentially provide depth on the right side.
Absolutely. And he fits, I think, what you're looking for, in that he can do some of that defensive work, but he can absolutely be a weapon in getting forward, because that's kind of how this team is going to be structured at times. Is you're going to have to be able to do both things, and it's a lot of work. It's exhausting, and you're asking a lot of guys. But I think he showed that last year. He's absolutely going to be one to watch. There's going to be names that of course, you're not going to know. It's not like we have the MLS Combine like a couple years ago where they would have the games on. That was always fun.
That's where I saw Brandon By like that. I remember watching that, and they were talking about, it was David Goss who was calling it and talking about the conversion of him from a forward at Western Michigan, and he was going to be a right back at MLS. And I'm like, what? Okay. And you started to see him, and it's like, wow, it's really raw, because he's converting positions on the fly, but there's something there. I was kind of hoping he would end up in Atlanta. I feel good about noticing that one.
And as we're about to get Dylan on, I'm going to leave you with this, and you don't have to discuss it while I'm here, but please do not neglect the SBI mock draft with our favorite Giant center back.
Yeah, he ended up back on Atlanta's side of things with that, because initially when the SBI, which is highly recommended, Ivis Galarcep does a ton of great stuff with covering soccer in general, but his coverage of the Super Draft is outstanding, and it's absolutely worth the subscription. His first mock draft had a player go to Atlanta, then it changed. Then his final one did have Matthew Necita from Navy coming to Atlanta, and I have never seen a 6'8" center back like Matthew Necita, and he can move. He's got some game. He's a very interesting prospect, and he seems to be one that And this is the super draft in a nutshell. You've got guys who are projected to go 10 on one mock draft, and you got guys who are projected to go 50 on another. Like, it's all over the map. But Necita was a fascinating prospect when I saw that mock draft come up and started digging into him a little bit. Jarrett, you just like the tall guys.
I think they're honestly mad and frustrated and probably like, you know what? We're tired of him being taller than everyone in the locker room. We're going to get someone who he's actually smaller than, which is a change of pace from having like an Ezekiel Barco, who I can just about put in my jacket pocket.
Bragging about your height again. There you go.
I mean,
set pieces.
If you get Necita, just partner him with Bryce Washington, and you have one of the most physically terrifying center back pairings in USL. Jesus.
I mean, I think that's the kind of stuff you're looking for in the draft. If you're Atlanta United, is you're looking for guys who might be projects a little bit. Picking 19, you're not going to get a guy who's going to contribute straight away, I don't think. Maybe depth, especially maybe on the right side. The right back group is not the greatest in this draft, but that's a spot where you might want to get somebody, depending on what happens with Ronald Hernandez. Maybe you get a veteran like a Jesper Lofsson from Pittsburgh, who played some in German academies. You know, he kind of fits the bill of guys Atlanta's drafted before. So, Jarrett, thank you for your time. We appreciate it. I'll be talking to you
Always.
later on.
Yeah, possibly. We'll see.
Okay. See you later.
You
All right. For the first time in 2022, let's bring Dylan Butler into the mix. What's up, Dylan? How are you?
Hey, boys. How are you?
Good, good. Thanks for jumping on with us. Thanks for jumping on with some video, too. Everybody's excited.
Yeah. I get to show off my scarves behind me, which is always great, right?
Very, very nice. I am showing off my Georgia shirt and hat today because I'm a little excited, Dylan.
Understood. Congrats.
Didn't get a lot of sleep last night, Dylan. I was not out in downtown Athens like some of the lunatics, though. I didn't do anything like that, but yeah, I didn't get a whole lot of sleep last night. It was a lot of fun.
And this is the week of the year with this particular date where I am at the Gulf of Mexico, thus the Art Deco background this particular week. I'll be back in the office next week, but greetings from the Gulf of Mexico this week.
There we go. Looks nice.
Well, it's been really busy lately, Dylan, in MLS. The rosters are with real moves and with rumored moves starting to fill up. We got a few teams already in camp. We'll get into the super draft at the end because I do want to kind of pick your brain about strategy of it at this point. I don't think any of us are going to dig into the pros and cons of 3 different players and who should be number 1. But right. I think there is a conversation to be had about the super draft and its future. But let's jump into some of these moves that have happened. The Dom Dwyer one was an interesting one yesterday, but when the details started to come out about Dwyer's second year on his deal being a $300,000 salary, it all makes a lot of sense. And the rebuild in Toronto is really fully on now. Yeah,
and I've seen some talk on Twitter, like, how can you sign him to that kind of a contract? I don't think they ever intended to keep him for a second year, So it was like, you do the back and forth with the agent. Like, how do we get him on board? We need a striker in the worst way. So you take a flyer on him, never, I'm sure, truly intending to keep him on the books for the next year. So it was one of those fun deals. It wasn't like quite the trading Gam for Tam kind of a deal with Dallas, but I did like also some of the fun on Twitter, like, remembering Dom Dwyer's greatest moments with FC Dallas, kind of a thing. So that was fun as well. But listen, it obviously makes a ton of sense for Toronto. We talked about at the end of last year the teams to really follow in the offseason, and we said LAFC would be really, really interesting, but wow, has Toronto really turned the corner and become an exciting offseason team, right? With arguably one of the biggest signings in MLS history and the promise of more moves to come.
Where do you put that Insigne signing in MLS history?
So I gotta say, I'm of the school of thought that Beckham's always got to be one. Yeah.
I'm with you.
Right, because if not, it's like MLS, it's like AD and BC, right? Like this is like there's no current MLS the way it's structured if not for that Beckham deal, right? So he changed the way the whole league worked, and he has a rule. He has a Beckham exception or a Beckham rule, right? It's designated player rule. So he's always one for me, but it's it's super hard to say before he even plays the game, right? But I kind of got to say, based on everything in Sydney, it could be like 2. He could be that important because he's a captain of a Serie A team and a very good Serie A team. He's a current player and a significant player for the Italian national team, and he's what, 31 years old, right? So he's all the talk of prime, post prime, going into his prime. He's in the late stages of his prime, but he's still in his prime coming to MLS. So I think in that sense, it's a significant move. There were others that were maybe bigger commercially, right? Zlatan being maybe the biggest example of that. Other World Cup winners who have also made a big deal, and Henry here in New York being one of those. But yeah, for me, I think he could be number 2, just based on the money that's involved and the significance of the player. And now you would suspect maybe teams sort of piggyback off that, and it raises the level of those signings in the league.
I think John's connection at times gets stalled out a little bit. So, yeah, he's gone completely blurry
but
face
we
now.
We all know, Dylan, that
there we go.
Believe sports and entertainment. They're
keep going, John.
Oh, wow. That's not. We all know, Dylan, that Maple Leaf sports and entertainment is not going to take failure.
Yeah.
Lightly. They're not going to take failure lightly.
Well,
all right.
I'll jump in. I'll jump in a little bit from what I guess John was saying. I mean, yeah, 100%, right? I mean,
hold on. I'm trying to get him muted, but it's catching up in the stream now, and I can't even get him muted. He's lost in the loop here.
What they're doing.
Oh, jeez.
It's investing in their future.
Okay. We might have it now, Dylan. I think we know what John was getting at with the ownership and how aggressive they're going to be. And
yeah, and you know what? I applaud them for that, right? Because they looked to be a team. We talked about a lot last year, right? About there wasn't sort of that middle ground where they had the older players who led them through that trouble, right, in 2017, and they had some good young players, and Akinola being one of those. Coming up through the Schaffelberg, right, coming up through the academy, but they didn't have that middle ground. It seemed like, and for a variety of reasons, they struggled last year. But I applaud Bill Manning, and look, obviously he's got to do it for his job, right? But to kind of come around and go, you know what? Here's a new 5-year plan, and now this plan is going to be with a forward look at the World Cup coming up on our shores, and yes, they've got the money and they're willing to spend it. But I think it's certainly a win-win for the player, for the team, but I think for the league, because I think it now fires a shot like, here's what you got to do, right? Like, here's what we did. You want to be competitive like us. You've got to raise your level in terms of your signings.
I mean, it shows another route. Like, I think we've had the Philadelphias who have been, heavily domestic production within the academy, picking up guys from overseas that fit a system. You've got Dallas and what they've done. You got Colorado and their route, which it worked. They were the best team in the West this past season with picking up guys from other teams and bringing them into the league on like a second team in the league and finding success that way. We've seen what Atlanta's done. We've seen what LAFC has done, going out and spending money on transfer fees. Toronto is really the first to go out and kind of pull the Juventus move of getting guys on freeze,
yeah,
but offering them huge salary to come in. there's so many different ways to win in this league, and that's what, you know, Toronto's kind of showing you a different way. I did love the strategy conversation with Manning about, yeah, this isn't just a guy became available and it is what it is. It's we're looking at maximizing things going into 26. Obviously, they want to get back to where they were and be more successful on the field, but that long-term plan of whoever's next, because they're not going to stop here. If it's Belotti, if they can win that sweepstakes or go get somebody else, Toronto's going to show some teams that maybe don't want to spend it on a transfer fee where it is a little more speculative. Hey, scout the market for guys who are available on a free and want to come to this league. You might have to pay them a little bit more in salary to get here, but you're not paying a transfer fee to bring them in.
I also love the shout that he made for transfer market, right? Like he was
Yeah.
transfer market. Like, dude, we all do. This is incredible to hear a president of a team be like, yeah, I went to transfer market and I was looking to see who was on a free, and love it.
Yeah, that's like our preseason planning everywhere. It's like, okay, wait a minute, who's going to come out of contract this year? All right, here we go.
Yep.
Here's the other question I have about where things are with MLS at the moment. You have this really interesting Miami, Charlotte, maybe Orlando situation, according to Sam Stejskal, with the number one spot in the allocation order. The allocation process is a little bit of a complicated one, but essentially, and correct me if I'm wrong, like it's guys who left the league for a significant amount who, if they're going to come back in, they come through this order, or guys who are national team players who haven't been in the league before. Essentially, there's a list of players that are available through this mechanism. Charlotte had the number one spot. They traded it to get Christian McCoon. And now, according to Sam Stejskal, Orlando might go get it. And people are trying to figure out who they are going to sign with it. Are you hearing anything about this?
I've not, well, I mean, not about that last part, certainly, but I have to give a huge credit. Like, I mean, we have no idea how this is going to work out, but just with the understanding at how hard it is to turn a roster over in MLS with all the mechanisms that are there, huge kudos to Chris Henderson for like what he's done. It's been remarkable, the way that he's been able to shed money off of his books. Obviously, how handicapped they were on, and he wasn't there. It wasn't his issue, right? But you know, having had the problem that they had last year with the Matuidi situation, but you know, they're not done yet there too, shedding money off their books. So huge credit to him and the way he's been able to do that in such a short order. So Miami's going to look totally different, obviously, in the upcoming year. But that's in MLS, especially, that's so hard to do. So right off the bat, you know, major credit goes to Chris Henderson for doing that. But yeah, no, that's interesting, right? Like you think about who is, especially in a World Cup year, right? What U.S. national team players aren't playing, right, overseas. So now you sort of like, you know, what guy could that be? You know, as one example, right?
DeAndre Yedlin fits that bill
for sure,
but he doesn't fit Orlando.
Correct.
He would fit Miami,
right. So you know, is there going to be a deal there between Miami, Orlando? I mean, there's so many ways you can move around that.
Does Seattle come in the mix to bring Yedlin home? Yeah,
I mean, that was rumored last year as well.
Mm-hmm.
So
I don't know. It's going to be a wild ride. I was shocked to see Pithy Martinez's name come up, and that was an interesting one. I didn't know there were any rumblings of him potentially coming back to MLS. Pithy had the knee injury, was out for a long period of time. He's just returned to action at Al Nassr, so who knows? I think the other big move that probably is going to get announced today is a player that we've talked about before, was maybe on the fringes of the underrated team that we did, Elliott going to LAFC. That's a pretty significant signing for LAFC.
Yeah, and I'm surprised Sporting Kansas City was willing to let him go, right? Like, he was such an integral part of what they've done, and he had so many minutes under Vermees, so he was kind of that good soldier. Was surprised that happened, but yeah, that would be a big move for LAFC. One that just came across the wire with Miami, where they just picked up Clement Diop.
Thank you.
in a deal. So that's another move there for Miami, right? Where they bring in a former Montreal goalkeeper. So that's one that just crossed the wire. But yeah, listen, you love Elliott. I think he's a solid player. Plays the game simply. I think, again, with the understanding that LAFC midfield is going to look vastly different. Yeah, I think he's a great guy just to put in there. And also he's proven in Sporting as well. If you need a spot center back, right? Yep. He'll go there as well. So I think he has that versatility in that spine that you need.
All right. I'm a little scared, but let's try John again.
Who hasn't done anything so far, Dylan, that concerns you because of their inactivity?
Yeah, I kind of point to a Red Bulls in that case, right? Where the only kind of rumblings that I've come across thus far has been Caden Clark probably coming back at least for half a season. But it's also a Caden Clark who was kind of underwhelming last year, right? And it's so hard to say whether that's just based on the enormous hype train that comes with an academy player, and everyone, once you score early goal, right, or show some skills early, everyone loves you and you're all over the place and you're the next greatest player in the world. He seemed to have taken a little bit of a step back this year, maybe a little bit back to reality. But again, with youth, you're going to get that up and down, right? It's not going to be a consistency with players. So I think that was the case with him. But that's part of the problem, I think, with the Red Bull strategy last year, where they went so loan heavy that now you're hurt by it, right? Because if you're not willing then to do, if there was a purchase option and you weren't willing then to trigger that player is gone, and now that's kind of the boat they're in, where they lose a lot of guys who were pretty important to their setup, like a Fabio, even a Gutman, right? Going back to Atlanta's books, I think he had a great season with the Red Bulls. So their inactivity is a little bit head scratching right now.
Yeah, when you go the loan route, and teams can do it. I mean, Defensa Justicia did it in Argentina and took it all the way to a Copa Sudamericana. But you're constantly in a cycle with that, because if you're just bringing guys on loan that are unlikely to do permanent deals with, then you've got to have the next crop of loan guys ready to go. Yeah. And, maybe for New York, what they're kind of stuck with at this point is waiting to see, as we get later in the window, who's kind of on the outs at their club and needs playing time based off other moves that have happened, and then bringing guys in on loan late. But it's going to really make the first part of the season difficult for them.
Yeah, no, I agree. And obviously, as we know, that first part of the season is coming early, right? So yeah. I'm surprised that they've not been more active at this point. I mean, they've more of their moves have sort of been, the signing guys to contracts and doing the deal with Nealis and trading for his brother Dylan Nealis. So and a big one too. Let's not, like Lewis Morgan's a big deal, right? That's a good move that they made. But in terms of the transfer window, like surprised they haven't been a little bit more active.
You putting much stock into this rumor coming out of somewhere between Poland and Italy about Adam Buksa potentially going to Pisa in Serie B for $9.5 million?
Well, look, I think if those numbers are to be believed, then you do have to put stock, right? Like they're the leaders in Serie B.
Okay. So
you would think maybe they're looking to make the promotion move and make a big splash. So if they are in fact willing to spend $9.5 million, I think, going back to transfer market, that's a little bit even above what he's valued at. So I think it would be a good move. He's been talking about a move back to Europe as well, or wanting to move back to Europe. He's just got onto the Polish national team radar, right? Scored some goals in qualifying. So I think it would be a good move for Revs and certainly for Buxa with the I guess understanding or hope that that's a team now looking to push, almost like a DK last year, right? Like where Barnsley was making that push, and you were hoping that they would get to the champions to go from the championship to the EPL. I think that's the case a little bit with Pisa right now.
John?
And, we see this, I think Stuart Finn, was another one that you were looking at that was heading for a Serie B move as well. But the key in all of these is that from our perspective here is that you're hoping that they're going to play. They're not going to invest that kind of money in a player like Adam Buxa if he's not going to play. But with all of these deals that you see with some players, you want them to go to opportunities where they're going to play, flourish, and advance their game. You don't want it to be like a Reggie Cannon kind of a move where, you wonder if you're going to get paid, but you want them to play in these kinds of things. And that's what I think that a lot of folks are hoping for in these situations. Go get paid, but play at the same time instead of sit on a bench or get hidden somewhere.
Yeah, and I got to think that a Serie B team is not going to splash that kind of cash if they don't intend to play him, right? So I think that's certainly the intention there, right? So if they're looking to if that is in fact more than just a rumor.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. It sounds like there's a relationship with Buxa's manager and maybe the owner of the team at Pisa. So maybe there's something else going on there a little bit. Who knows? Wouldn't be the first time we see some odd moves happen with players leaving MLS for lots of money in weird places. We saw it here in Atlanta with Pithy Martinez. Nobody saw, Al Nasser dropping that kind of coin on Pithy at that time. And it's one of those deals you kind of have to take. It's just so good. You have to move with it. All right, let's get into the Super Draft. It's today, MLSsoccer.com, extensive coverage, I think starting at 2:30, right?
Correct. Yeah.
I thought Soccer America had 3 good questions in their newsletter about the draft from a big picture standpoint. And I'm going to adapt the first one. Charlotte's got the first pick. Their roster currently is weird to me. I don't really know what they're going to look like on opening day right now. They feel like one of the few teams coming into this draft that need to pick a player who's going to play minutes this year because they got a lot of gaps in this team right now.
Yes. So and by the way, how about the business move that they make with McGree, right? Like where they sign him, they loan him, and now they make coin off him from Celtic, right? That's some impressive movement. I was hoping to see him. I was watching some of the YouTube clips, and I thought he'd be a fun one to watch in MLS. But so Jason, to your point, you need to get it right, I think, with that pick and get a guy who will play, who will get some minutes right away, right? Or at least who will compete for those minutes. And I think when you look at the draft, certainly since clubs have made that big push for their academies, right? So like not pre-academy days where so many of the best players are there. I think generally speaking, that player is a center back, right? Like a domestic center back.
I agree.
So now you start to go down a little bit of that class, and I kind of look at like a Kip Keller. It seems like he's the one who's everyone is speaking about as to be that guy who will come in, big, strong center back who will play or who can compete for minutes right away. So, we've seen it from a Walker Zimmerman to in Atlanta, right? A Miles Robinson, guys who have gone the collegiate route through the draft, who have become very solid. Sean Nealis in Rebels, another example, who have been solid players for teams. So I think that's if I'm Charlotte, I think that's kind of where I'm looking at.
Yeah, if I'm Charlotte, I don't know how risky I can get with this pick.
Yeah,
because of what their roster currently looks like. Teams that are picking 2, 3, 4, 5, who maybe can take a shot on somebody who might turn into something special. There's a few wingers. There's a player like Eric Centeno, who's a Generation Adidas, who was an attacking player in college. Most people think he'll turn into a wing back or a right back at the next level. that's not somebody I think you're counting on in 2022 to be a significant contributor. Charlotte needs it. But then when you get into their roster, center back is a position where they've got Anton Walks now. They've got Christian McCoon now, two guys who played a lot of minutes last year. Soboshinsky and Corujo, we don't really know what they're going to bring to the table. You know, their roster really is in need of players that you're probably not going to get significant contributions from in their rookie year. And that's where I just keep coming back to Charlotte. I feel like there are some surprises coming with them, but I don't know what they are. I don't know what they're going to end up looking like day one. It might be a slow start for them.
I mean, could they potentially then even trade the number one spot, right? Like even
that's a smart play.
Like look even just below them, right? Cincinnati is a team that desperately needs that center back, right? You know, maybe again, right? Some allocation money, international slot, whatever it might be. I don't know if it's as important to them, right? To have that spot.
Yeah, it's a weird one. Ives Galarcep in his mock draft has Ben Bender going to Charlotte, and Bender is a player that maybe a lot of people are saying is the most talented player, but he's one of those guys that, you know, he's a kind of a playmaker in college, you know, and he's going to have to turn into more of an 8 at the next level. Is he going to be able to eat up those minutes early on? I mean, you've got to almost look at it two ways if you're Charlotte, because of course you want to be competitive and build for the long haul and be smart about how you're building, but you also need guys who can just play and guys who can be competent this season. You've got to get through the first year at least. And I don't know if, you know, that kind of player is. I'm with you. I think the guys that we'll be talking about at the end of the season that come out of the super draft are going to be defenders. They're going to be guys who play on the back line, either as a center back, like a Kessler in New England, what we've seen from him, or an outside back. I think those are the guys who are going to have the most immediate impact out of this draft class.
Yeah, and immediately, unless again it's a guy who transitions back from like a winger to being an outside back, the outside back class this year I think is relatively weak. So
it is.
I think you look at center back. You know, you've got some guys. I know. Yesterday on Extra Time, Michael Lahoud was talking a lot about Thor Ulfsson, right? From
Ulfarsson, I think.
Yeah. First of all, I love to have a guy named Thor in MLS. That's
yes.
great.
Yeah,
and we've all probably at this point seen the viral video, right, of smack talk and the against UCLA.
Yeah,
so,
if anybody hasn't seen that from the NCAA tournament with Duke and UCLA, Duke scored and Thor mocked the goalkeeper, which was not Justin Garces. Justin Garces was out injured at that point, but mocked him with his diving about 5 or 6 times before getting decked.
Yeah. So again, I love that kind of thing, right? I'm all for that. Now take it forward. Let's go ahead in time now. I don't know. Let's say he gets picked by San Jose, for example, right? So now it's San Jose, Salt Lake, and he does that to Ochoa. How much fun would that be, huh?
I like it. Okay, right? I need Thor out in the Western Conference. That's number one. We need to see
now
that.
I'm trying to think of spicy relationships now.
Yeah,
you could have ones like that. Other than Ochoa,
you've got a few guys who could be that. You've got a few personalities in this draft. You've also got a few guys, and there was one that I found really interesting, and you might be able to help me a little bit with him because I've seen him not on draft boards, and then in Ives Galarcep's final big board, had him on at the end of the list. Michael Knapp, and there's 4 guys who are kind of in this situation. Guys who left college early and went pro. Knapp signed a deal with Red Bulls 2. You got a couple players from Las Vegas Lights that the LAFC organization signed to USL deals, and you've got Damian Rodriguez with Chattanooga FC and Necita. Those guys are kind of wild cards to me because when you start to compare what they did last year, how much are you ranking a USL championship season or in Rodriguez's season and situation, a Necita season, to what maybe some guys who haven't had any professional experience have done, didn't even come up internationally in those academies. I wonder if these guys maybe get picked a little bit higher than we're expecting just because they've got some pro games under their belt.
Yeah, I think it's a fair shout. Because I know if I'm a sporting director or from a general manager, one of the variables is how will they respond to a professional environment, right? And even though it's a lower level, that they've trained, every day in a professional environment, they've played in a professional environment, they played against men, and I think that might mean more than the potential of a player who's not been in that, right? So unless they've had youth international experience and they're going overseas and things like that, I think pro experience is huge. I think academy experience maybe goes a little bit behind that, right? So if they're an academy product who went on and played collegiate soccer, that's a big deal as well. So I think those are sort of some of the things that these GMs are looking at in a modern day draft.
Yeah, I mean, we could see like what Dallas did with Nicky Hernandez, where they signed him to their second team, then drafted him to make sure they got his rights. We could see Red Bulls and LAFC drafting these guys that have kind of been in the family a little bit already.
Yeah.
Would seem to make a lot of sense. What's your day looking like? Are you on super draft duty later on this afternoon? No,
I think it's kind of light. Strange to say. I've never had probably a quieter draft day. It's going to be, I think just hanging out with the fam a little bit, right? Running around with soon to be 3-year-olds, which, I mean, the pressing and counter pressing that's involved with that is so tiresome.
Yeah.
No, just quiet, I think, around here. And then, maybe catching up on a little bit of the Marvel universe later on, watching some old Daredevil on Netflix right now. So.
See, you'll be the guy they call when all the other chaos happens around the league, like Albert Rusnak signs with Seattle and everybody else is on draft duty. You're going to get that call.
Yeah, you're probably right. The bat phone's like, hello? Yeah, Rusnak got it.
Yeah, okay, I'm on it. Oh, man. Next week, everybody will be in camp. When we talk next week, I would expect even more deals over the next few days as teams fill out these preseason rosters and announce their preseason plans. Dylan, thank you for the time today.
Champions League is right around the corner, and here we go. Right, next round of national team games as well. Never stop.
It's absolute chaos to open 2022. Thanks, Dylan. Appreciate it. We'll talk to you next week.
All right, boys. See ya.
We get Dylan Butler. Make sure you're following him, Dylan_Butler, on your social media platforms. John, how is your connection? Are we going to give this a shot today?
Oh, I think we're going to give it a shot. Hey, I would not have packed my notes if I didn't think otherwise.
Well, Toca football and Eliminize, it might turn robotic at times. Blame John's internet connection. Where are you again, John?
St. George Island, Florida, sir, right? Staring at the Gulf of Mexico.
Okay. Blame that place's internet if John has some problems with this. But, John, tell us about Toca football and Eliminize, por favor.
Do you have a young soccer player in your family? You ever considered private instruction with a professional instructor to take your favorite player's game to the next level? Here's how you do it. Toca football has 4 indoor soccer training centers in the Atlanta area. Their trainers utilize innovative technology in a fun environment to help improve your favorite player's skill and decision-making. Give Toca football a try, why don't you? SDH is partnering with Toca to offer our listeners an opportunity to check out their revolutionary and fun Toca soccer training method for no cost whatsoever. $0. Book your free session now with the promo code DH. DH. Go to tocafootball.com/program/Toca-training. tocafootball.com/program/TOCA-training and get your favorite player's game headed to the next level right then and there. SDH is also brought to you by Eliminize Service for odor-free, clean, fresh air. Eliminize deodorizes enclosed spaces like houses, apartments, and condos. They have created a customized solution that eliminates all organic odors, including those like pet cigarettes or food. Realtors and property managers use Eliminize service to eliminate bad odors to help them sell or rent their homes that much faster. Eliminize offers a turnkey process. It makes it easy to work with realtors and property managers. It's kind to the environment, offering a green way to get rid of odors without any kind of toxic residue, different than Febreze or the other masking agents we might have under the sink in the kitchen. They use a proven scientific formula to destroy odor of the molecule, and you can use either cubic feet or parts per million when it comes to your pricing to come up with a price that's. If you have any kind of questions, frequently asked or otherwise, you can go to their website and get a great offer right now. Eliminize.com/Atlanta. Remember, the /Atlanta is the key part in all of this so they know what part of the world you are reaching out from. ELIMINIZE.com/Atlanta. Eliminize service for odor-free, clean, fresh air. Eliminize service, proud sponsors of everything SDH.
Not bad. You went max headroom a little bit a couple of times, but not too bad. You didn't go full.
I think tomorrow what we'll do is we'll go mobile hotspot as opposed to Wi-Fi.
Yeah, probably a good call. John is broadcasting from inside a 1983 soap opera, Uncle No Pockets. That is correct.
That is true.
Okay.
Yes. As a fan of Miami, this bit, yes.
As a fan of what? You broke up there. They tried to block you.
Of course I did. Miami.
Okay.
The first 3 seasons, anyway.
I think Miami Vice looked a whole lot slicker than your current feed. I think we were going with more of the old school tape, like Another World or something.
Yes. Yeah. Loving Santa Barbara, Another World, right there with it.
Yes. Miami Vice was not a soap opera. That is correct, Jason Nix. Okay, some MLS stuff you might not have caught.
I was going with the day before.
No, people were talking about the look. That's where we were. That was the current topic. You don't have a sports coat with the sleeves rolled up, so no, you're not Miami Vice. Don't even try to be Don Johnson. You're not going to be able to pull that off. Okay. Other MLS stuff that is on the horizon, potentially some moves that have happened, some things that haven't. Let's get caught up really quickly. Diego Valeri, according to Cesar Luis Merlo, is headed back to Lanús in Argentina. Not a shock. I mean, this was part of the conversation going into MLS Cup, was that Valeri would be leaving Portland at the end of the season. 35 years old. I think the fact that they didn't bring him in until very, very late in that tells you, I think, all you need to know. I don't know how much longer he's got in his career, but having the opportunity to go home to Argentina and finish his career is great for him. I'm sure Portland will let him go. He is under contract. I think it's pretty well expected that they will mutually terminate the deal and allow him to go. And also, I mean, I would not be shocked if when he does hang the boots up, if he doesn't settle in Portland long term. He loves the city, has been a huge fan of the Thorns and brought his kids to games. So I think Valeri will be back in Portland, but I think we've seen him play his last match for the Timbers and have an opportunity to play for Lanús this season, according to Cesar Luis Merlo. LA Galaxy are linked to Montpellier's captain and attacking midfielder Teji Savanier, according to Foot Mercato. 30 years old, 6 goals, 6 assists in 18 games across all competitions. Not a bad return at all. Not sure what the money would look like here, but the Galaxy have shopped in France before, so not really a surprise based off past relationships. We'll see if he gives them a little bit more of what they need. Facundo Torres in Uruguay and Peñarol, it's looking like it is going to happen for him to come to Orlando, around a $10 million deal. So essentially swapping out Daryl Dike to bring in Facundo Torres. There's a lot of back and forth about this. The club was trying to drum up more interest and I think trying to drum up a European offer to potentially make more money on it. It wasn't going to happen. Player doesn't want to stay and wait for those offers. He wants to go. Family was pushing the club to get it done. So according to all the reports, it's going to get done at about $10 million. Orlando has already made a signing. Cesar Araujo, coming in from Montevideo Wanderers in Uruguay. 20 years old. He'll be a U22 initiative player. 63 appearances across all competitions at 20 years old. That's significant experience coming in. And going back to the SuperDraft conversation, when you're able to bring in a 20-year-old from Uruguay with 60-plus games, including Copa Libertadores and Sudamericana, versus bringing in a player who is all Big Ten, it's not that difficult here to get that going. Makes a lot of sense. All right. Deportivo Cali is linked to Christian Mafla of the New England Revolution. That's coming from Emerson Reyes from Colombia. Mafla is Colombian. He's played significantly in the Colombian top flight. Makes a lot of sense because New England has DeJuan Jones, who has played a lot of left back, and he would probably just go into that back line, and it'd be Jones, it'd be Bai on the outside, it'd be Farrell, and it'd be Kessler in the middle. Any return New England can get for Mafla, I'm sure they would be happy with it. Dylan mentioned Riley McGree. If you missed that, he hasn't played for Charlotte yet because they haven't played. He was on loan to Birmingham City, and it looks like he is going to get sold for somewhere around $3 million plus potentially another $1 or $2 million on top of it. He's going to get sold to Celtic. It's a pretty nice piece of business for Charlotte to flip a player who never appears for the club and get a nice return for him. Should go down any time now. Celtic has been very aggressive and has spent a good bit of money, as they're not happy they didn't win their 10th league title in a row last year. They're trying to bounce back fast. Houston are linked to a Paraguayan striker, Sebastian Ferreira. He is at Libertad in Paraguay, has scored a lot of goals for Libertad. He's been their primary goal scorer since 2020 when he joined initially on loan from Morelia in Liga MX. Ferreira could be headed in very soon to get the deal done. They need a number 9. There was some talk it could be Mauro Manotas coming back to Houston, but it's looking like it's going to be Sebastian Ferreira, who has scored goals at the club level in Paraguay. Not as much in Liga MX. Is he going to be able to do that for Houston? Some signings that are done: Drew Moore, Stephen Betashore go back to Colorado. Raheem Edwards signs with the LA Galaxy. Previously played for LAFC, one of the first players to move across town. Talked about it also in the segment with Dylan about this number 1 spot in the allocation order. Sam Stejskal reported that, yes, Miami got it from Charlotte in the Christian McCoon deal. Orlando City were interested in making a play for it. The names that he had listed, now he said he's heard whispers on all of these players on the allocation list with regards to returning to MLS. Pithy Martinez, DeAndre Yedlin, Carlos Grueso, and Chris Durkin, and there's others. If it's Orlando going for this spot, I don't know if any of those really fit. So I kind of wonder who Orlando would be looking to get off this list. They're not going to get DeAndre Yedlin, for example, because they have Juan right back. They wouldn't make this play to get Yedlin. There are other teams who could try to get into that number 1 sweepstakes, or Miami could bring somebody back into the league, and Miami could use a player like a Pithy Martinez. They could definitely use a player like a DeAndre Yedlin. Miami makes a lot of sense getting that number 1 spot in the allocation order. I don't know about the Orlando one. Justin Maram has re-signed with RSL. He was a free agent that some people were potentially looking forward to seeing make moves, maybe coming back to Atlanta. Not sure if that conversation was ever had. He's re-signed at RSL for another couple of years. Julian Green's name's come up with LAFC. That's a fascinating one. And the other moves that got done yesterday, a couple of homegrown signings. Jude Welling's 15 years old from U17 team with RSL. He's played for Real Monarchs in USL Championship. He signed as a homegrown, and Justin Garces here in Atlanta. Garces played for Atlanta United 2 in 2018, went to UCLA, played on some kind of bad UCLA teams, teams that were not at UCLA's usual standard. And then Garces got hurt going into the postseason this year, missed the season finale and missed the postseason, but minor injury. He's fine now. He comes back into the mix. This is a guy who played in the U17 World Cup. This is a guy who has trained with the first team during his time in the academy and his time with Atlanta United 2 in 2018. He's talked about how much he learned at that point in his career from Brad Kazan. Garces will probably play because he has very little pro experience. He had, I think, 2 starts with Atlanta United 2 in 2018. He'll probably primarily play with Atlanta United 2 this season. They've also got Vicente Reyes under a 2's contract. So those are 2 professionals at goalkeeper in the mix. You've got Dylan Castanera, who right now would be the number 2 with the first team. You've got a lot of flexibility here, John, if you can speak and that doesn't break up. You could go out and get a veteran number 2 if you want, and Castanera can be the 3 and continue to develop. You could, even in this draft, there's a couple of Generation Adidas goalkeepers that you could grab to develop, and Castanera could be the number 2. You can go out and sign somebody. You can go out and not sign somebody. You could go get young. You could go get older. You could go pay whatever transfer it's going to be for Rocco Rios Novo at Lanús. Atlanta United has a lot of flexibility and can take the best deal available for another goalkeeper if they so choose.
And that was the point that I was going to make, is that the flexibility is there with Reyes in-house, bringing Garces in under contract, have Dylan Castanera in. It's like what you're doing is you're planning for every possible angle and contingency. It's something that we know that Atlanta United does. There's always a succession plan. There's always plans for making sure that folks get reps and are as sharp as they can be. So the idea of bringing in Garces adds to all of the other moving pieces that can help you in any given situation that comes across this year, because you've got action that you can have with the 2s. You can have 2 guys getting reps. You can have a 3rd moving its way up to Atlanta United. So that flexibility is key here, but it's good to see a player like Justin Garces, who we got the chance to see a couple seasons ago, under contract in-house. Now we get to see where the pieces fall. And, obviously folks, even in the timeline, they're mentioning about on the Twitch pitch, they're mentioning about Rocco Rios Novo. What's the question there? We don't have an answer yet, but what this does with Garces is it protects your flanks, and it's also economical versus, I think it was a $3 million price tag on Rocco Rios Novo, Jason?
That's what had been reported when the loan went down, that it had a $3 million price tag on it. According to some whispers out of Argentina, the 2 teams have been talking. Rocco is back in training with Lanús as they're starting to prepare for the League Cup, which is more like a miniature league in Argentina. They'll play, I think, 13 or 14 games in that competition in the first half of the calendar year. And he's in camp with Lanús. Doesn't mean a deal doesn't get done, but it definitely gives Atlanta leverage in terms of they don't have to do that deal if they can't get the number down to what they would want. And I'm assuming the $3 million is not what they would want. Now, one thing to keep in mind when this stuff comes up about the maneuvering with a guy like Rocco Rios Novo, he would not take up an international slot. He is an American citizen, was born in Los Angeles and grew up in Argentina. But that part of it, yeah, you're not going to spend more than likely on a young goalkeeper, multi-millions of dollars, and need an international slot. In this case, you don't need the international slot. The question is just, do you need to go spend that transfer fee? And you don't have to now with the pieces you have around it. You don't have to. You can if you want to, if you think he is the guy potentially down the line, but you don't have to. And there are a lot of goalkeepers available as free agents right now that could come in and be a backup for a year or 2, kind of a la the Kyle Rainish kind of figure in the team, who could come in and be a steady hand and has been a backup and understands that role and will push Brad Kazan in training and help him get better, help the young guys develop, and be somebody that you don't have to commit significant time to with Atlanta United 2. Garces is going to get the bulk of that time. Reyes is going to get plenty of it because he's on a pro deal with the 2s now as of Friday. Exciting to see the long term of what the goalkeeper position looks like for Atlanta. Reyes has come a long way really quickly, in my opinion. And Garces was one of the most highly rated guys when he went to UCLA in the first place, and nothing has taken away from that. He got about 60 games, around 60 games at the college level, which is not the pro level, but isn't bad. We know goalkeepers develop a little bit later too. So very curious to see what happens with Garces in the long term. Byrne thinks they would sign Lundgaard back as a second stringer before they pay a transfer fee for Rocco. There's probably a number that they would do. I mean, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's $1 million. I don't know if it's 1.5, if it's 2. I don't know where it falls that they would say yes, because you'd be signing him to a 5-year deal. You'd pay a transfer that would be spread out over that time. The money's not the issue. Fitting into the cap could be. But if you stretch it over a long period of time, which you would anyway because he's a teenager, yeah, maybe, possibly. I don't think it's incredibly likely. Lanús is going to have to come down from the asking price is what it's going to come down to. When we look at the SuperDraft and other potential moves, like I don't see anybody that is realistic that Atlanta United would trade up for example. I don't think that's on the cards. I do think there's guys they could pick at 19. Just looking at Ives Galarcep's latest with guys around that vicinity. Now, remember, I mean, and Ives is a pro doing this. Ives isn't just putting names down on a sheet of paper. He's actually looking at what teams need and not just taking a big board chart and saying this is 1 through 75. He's got that separate. His mock draft, you're looking at guys who are available and who fit the team that's picking. For example, he's got Jasper Lofelsund from Pittsburgh, a little bit older, right back, very attack-minded. He fits the Red Bull style. He's picked at 15, according to Ives Galarcep. If he was available at 19, he's somebody I could see Atlanta United picking because he's somebody who, with his experience, he came out of German academies, so similar to Gressel in that regard, except he's played as a right back for his entire career. Initially from Cologne. He played at a club, FC Hennef, before coming to Pittsburgh. He gets forward well. He's a good 1v1 player. If he's available at 19 and there's any questions about bringing Ronald Hernandez back, yeah, he would be an easy one to slot in and be a backup. You're not asking him to play a ton, but if he comes in and plays, it's not going to be too big for him in that situation. So he's one to keep an eye on if he's available at 19. What are the kind of positions and or profiles that you would think, John, that would fit for Atlanta United at 19?
At 19, you mentioned right back. And we can kind of itemize it, and I would think that you're not necessarily going to be looking at anybody up top unless there's questions when it comes to depth and playing time with Atlanta United too. Where would these individuals fit? So for me, traditionally, I'm looking at
hold that thought on up top, because GH brought that up about looking for a backup striker. I think the best strikers in the draft are probably going to be gone by the time you get to 19. Jacqueline at Notre Dame is a player, and Atlanta's had some success picking guys from Notre Dame. He's a player that I could see maybe fitting because he can play as a 9. He could play out wide. He's versatile. He's picked at 13, according to Galarcep. I don't think he'll be on the board by the time you get here. Simon Betcher from St. Louis is another one who I don't think will be here. Our good friend Thor got projected at 10 to Colorado. I don't think he's going to be available once you get there. Now, there is a player and another program that Atlanta United knows well who is projected at 21 to the LA Galaxy, Kyle Holcomb from Wake Forest. Remember, Machok Chol went to Wake, came back, signed the homegrown deal last year. Atlanta United, I'm sure, has a pretty good relationship with the program at Wake. Garrison Tubbs from the academy is there, and he's playing significantly. And when you start looking at potential homegrown signings down the road, Garrison Tubbs, I think, is on that list right now, really coming a long way, I think, in his career. But when we look at Holcomb is a guy who I think is a very classic college striker that I'm not 100% sure projects to the pro level in a significant way. Now, he's rated very highly. And again, Galarcep's got him going at 21. So that would mean he'd be available at 19 in that mock draft for Atlanta if they wanted to go it. Matt Doyle had Holcomb as the number 1 forward on the board. He's been rated anywhere between 5 and 14 in overall charts, and now 21, according to this one from Galarcep in the mock draft. Great finisher, tied for 7th all-time in goals scored at Wake. He has spent some time with U.S. youth national teams at the U18, U19 levels. I worry a little bit about pace and the athleticism with him at the next level. That's probably the biggest question I would have. I don't think Atlanta goes backup striker here, because I think when you're looking for the backup striker for what Atlanta will need out of that position, you're looking for somebody who can walk in the door and play and contribute straight away. I think you're also looking for somebody who can contribute in other ways than just scoring goals, can combine, can drop into that midfield a little bit in possession, is good with the ball at their feet. I don't know if you're going to find that guy in college who can contribute day one. Now, again, you know, if those guys aren't available and there's somebody that you like, that you feel like is maybe a bit of a project, you might go for that player. But I don't think you're going to get a backup striker that plays as a backup striker with the first team this year out of the college draft. I'm not expecting that.
So for me, I'm looking at the board. I'm looking at center back, considering, and I'm also looking at this through the Atlanta United 2 prism, considering that Bauer was brought in last year, and now he's no longer with you. And so I'm looking probably in that neighborhood to see if someone obviously is a project, can be developed, and maybe down the line be a part of a roster. But I'm not necessarily looking for someone that's going to be able to contribute day one for Atlanta United. So for me, center back and getting reps with Atlanta United 2 was where I was headed with my idea.
Yeah, I think center back is the most likely situation here for 2 reasons. Right now, your depth chart at center back is Miles Robinson, Alan Franco, George Campbell, Alex DeJohn, Bryce Washington. Bryce got over 20 games at the pro level last year coming in after the season at Pitt finished. That's the other weird thing about the college draft this year is, you know, you had that spring season. So you've got some guys who ended up playing in the spring, playing in the fall, playing, you know, nearly 30 games in some cases in the calendar year. So they kind of had a little bit of an apertura clausura kind of season, which is a good thing. It's definitely a good thing. You don't normally get that in college. So that's one thing that could help some of these guys. Bryce, is he ready to be the one who at times will be the emergency center back on the game day roster, or be, you know, number 21 on the 20-man game day roster, available if something happens? Or is he somebody who they're going to keep with the 2s to play? You know, is Alex DeJohn that guy? And at times last year, and we saw it with DeJohn's injury, you needed Bauer on a game day. Didn't play, but you needed him on that game day roster just in case. Are you looking for a center back who is maybe a little bit more of a project? And there are guys right around, again, in the mock draft from Ivis Galarcep, who would be that player who goes in Ivis's draft ahead of Atlanta's pick. Kendall Burks is one of those more projects. Burks played on the outside at Washington. Probably size-wise, ability-wise, he's going to be a center back at the next level. He's not going to be that center back who can really contribute day one. He's going to be learning the position. But he's got the athleticism. He's got the confidence on the ball. He could be a really nice center back, but it's going to take him some time. He would need to play with the 2s. He would need to be there with the 2s and not be that guy that at times becomes the emergency option with the first team. You got to have those guys. You got to, and I mean, I know, like, you got to have an Alex DeJohn, because at times you need that. You're going to have to go down to the 4th guy or the 5th guy on the depth chart. I don't think at 19 you're going to get somebody that will pass DeJohn straight away. Maybe they do by the end of the season. Matthew Necita is the one who's ended up on this mock draft, which is a really interesting, fascinating player. I cannot think of seeing a 6'8" player on the field. I mean, Peter Crouch was 6'7", I think.
Yeah.
And Peter Crouch was an anomaly. I can't think of a 6'8" center back I've seen. I mean, you see Jack Elliott at 6'4", and you're like, whoa, wait a minute. odd. I mean, you look at some of these videos of Necita, and it's just bizarre to look at him like in his pile of teammates, and it's like, wow, he's a giant. Obviously good in the air, I would hope, at his height. That's interesting. Is he quick enough? And that's the question that Galarcep brings up, because he's extremely athletic. He's not your typical taller player, and you think of Crouch. I don't know if athletic is the word that I would use for him. Necita's athletic. Like, he can run. He's got good pace. It's not so much the north-south speed with him. It's the lateral quickness. It's the side to side. It's the level of play. I mean, he was playing at Navy, not one of the top programs in the country. He would be somebody that would be very unique if he's available at 19, which is a little bit of a crapshoot anyway. If it doesn't pan out, it doesn't pan out. If it does, you've got one of the more unique players that you could find that could be a just massive threat on set pieces and could just give you a different look entirely. I don't know. I mean, at 19, that's kind of where I'm at, because I think when you get into this draft, and do keep in mind, last year, only 2 players in a rookie year played more than 500 minutes. So there's not as many guys that are going to come in and be the Daryl Dikes and be the Alistair Johnsons who played significantly in year one, be the Julian Gressels. There's not as many of them anymore because most of them are signing homegrown deals. There's a few. But at 19, you're probably looking for somebody who's going to need a little bit of time. Necita would be fascinating. Go ahead.
Well, just my question with Necita in general, outside of the on the field, is what is his service commitment? And how long a tenure is that? Would he get a waiver?
There isn't any conversation about that with Necita. At least I haven't seen it now, and I don't know the different situations. There's a player for Army that's on the big board, according to Galarcep. There's a player that has been around 19 in quite a few mock drafts from Air Force, and it is a conversation around him that he would not be available for preseason. Now, that might be down to finishing school more than a service commitment, but I haven't seen anything about service commitments with Necita. Tristan Trager is the player who is anywhere between 20 and 40 on charts, who's an attacking player who scored a lot of goals at Air Force, who can play out wide. He's originally from Southern California. I think he has to finish up his school commitment first. Again, at 19, you're probably not expecting a guy to come in straight away and contribute day one.
Right.
If that player is potentially worth it and you have the twos program to develop in, you could go after one of these guys, because I just think the level of expectation of what you get from this player is very low right now. And if you get anybody who surprises you along the lines of a Jack Elliott, then it's a bonus.
And that's the key to me in this, is that those players, late first round, what have you, there's not a high expectation. And let's say that you do take someone from a service academy in this 19 spot, if this is what you're looking for, and let's just, if we pin it into the Necita conversation, if Necita is what you're looking for, he fits a need, he is a project, but you can discuss with his particular service academy, okay, when is he available? When do you need him? What's the commitment? And have all these kinds of conversations ahead of time. Then it can be something where he can learn as a professional athlete, but at the same time, tick off the months for the service commitment, which have been trimmed with athletes in years past. Traditionally, it was as many as 4 or 5 years, but then after discussions, they sat there and it's like, okay, well, you can do 2 or you can do less if you do A, B, C, D, and E in reserves and things like that. So there's negotiating room here if a player like Necita is what you're looking for in the draft. And I think that you're spot on in bringing in a player like this, who is an anomaly that really could be a project worth working into. I think it would be an interesting get at 19, knowing everything else that's associated with it.
Yeah, I'm just fascinated the more and more that I found a little bit of video on him and just the idea of that. And I think that's what you're looking for out of 19. You've got a pick in the second round as well. You've got other picks as well. There's some other guys in here that are even more of the question mark. I mean, Mcfadden was a third round pick that panned out great for Atlanta United too, and he's in the mix, I think, to potentially earn a pro deal or an MLS deal out of his play. Damian Rodriguez is a player I keep coming back to, and I mentioned the 4 players who are currently pros. There's one more as well who left Louisville early and went to San Diego Loyal. But Rodriguez didn't go to college. He won the high school state championship at McEachern. He plays for Dalton. He won 2 state championships, but he won that in May. He had played as an academy player for Chattanooga FC a decent bit before signing a pro deal with them in December. Now, that pro deal with Chattanooga FC included a educational stipend for college. He's one of the youngest players available in the draft. He did score a goal, had an assist in the NISA fall season with Chattanooga FC. He's a player that I'm sure at least has been around the conversation with Atlanta United, if not having been training with the academy at different points. He's in Dalton, so it's not exactly easy for him to be in the Atlanta United Academy. He's part of the North Georgia Soccer Academy that's connected with Chattanooga FC. But if you're going to pick in the third round, maybe the second, but definitely in the third or fourth, Rodriguez would be one that could make a lot of sense to grab his rights. If he stays at Chattanooga and plays there, you've got his rights for a year. And if he really blossoms this year, then put an offer in front of him. Or you can bring him into preseason and see if he maybe is worth an Atlanta United 2 contract at that point. And you've got his MLS rights. Rodriguez is a really interesting one in that regard to me. The other one that is kind of high on some of the lists for people is Roberto Molina. And he's one of the players who left college early. He was at UC Irvine, left college, signed a deal with the Las Vegas Lights. He could play wing. He could play up top. He's originally from El Salvador, spent time at the Barca Academy in Arizona. So a great, track record for him. Those guys, and it's really going to come down to how some of the GMs and technical directors around the league rate experience. I personally think guys who played a season in USL Championship or the year in NISA that Rodriguez had, I think they should be further ahead of guys that have question marks next to them coming out of college. I think they could factor in. I think guys who spent time at good European academies are going to get that bump up a little bit too, because they should be able to handle the transition really well. The problem with them is you're going to take up an international slot. And to take up an international slot on a player that probably is not going to contribute in a big way in this upcoming season and maybe in the first 2 seasons, that's tough to manage unless you've got that second team that you can loan them to and not worry about the slot.
Yeah, and I think that also the fun part and the interesting part to me when it comes to draft day is all of the different paths. And, it's academy, it's overseas, it's NISA, it's USL Championship. It's not just the traditional path of, okay, we're going to grab an 18-year-old, we're going to grab a 22-year-old, and they've done everything that has been the Tab A Slot B stuff that we've always talked about. All the different paths can give you a bunch of different experience. And and like I said, that for me is the interesting part of all of this. It's like, where does Team X view player Y and the path that got them to be considered and possibly picked up by a particular team? That's the interesting part of this for me, is you kind of get a window into the viewing habits of all of the different clubs and what they view when it comes to experience and talent and that kind of stuff when it comes to MLS draft day.
Yeah, I mean, you've got some players like Marky Badra, who is at Michigan, played 90 games in college. Because remember, guys got an extra year of eligibility if they wanted it because of the COVID year in 2020. Played 90 games, played 91, started 90, played with Columbus's academy and Generation Adidas Cup. He would come in and be pretty much what he is. And are some teams going to be in need of having a player like that who, if he gets the call in a game, it's not going to be too crazy for him. He's probably going to play a position that he's comfortable in as a holding midfielder. Yeah, there are guys like that who can make a nice little career in this league from it. I do think, in Michael Ruiz, that's the whole conversation about this is, and I think you got to be careful just looking at 1 year and formulating a hypothesis here. Michael says, 2 or 3 guys got more than 4 games. Everyone needs to the level set expectations. I'm definitely not setting expectations high, not at 19. But I also don't think the draft is useless. I do push back on that because from 2020's draft, going 1 year back, you have a player who was sold for nearly $10 million in Daryl DK. You have a player who was traded for $1 million in allocation money in Alistair Johnston. You have a player in Jack Mayer who's probably going to start the season for Nashville. You have Henry Kessler, who started on the best team in MLS regular season history. That's not a lot. Miguel Berry was the number 7 pick. He scored goals coming off the bench and spot starting for Columbus. It's not a ton. There are guys in the first round who didn't fit anywhere, didn't make it. It is a crapshoot. It absolutely is a crapshoot. But I don't think it's useless. I think at 19, center back is the deepest position in the draft. I think that's probably the most likely pick at 19. But I like the idea of a center back who gives you something different if you're going to pick there. And look, you might be able to trade down. I don't think you're going to have to trade up to get somebody unless you really like them. I don't think there's that player in this year in the 12 to 20 slots. I don't think there's a guy that I would trade up for. Might trade down and get somebody you want. Like if Necita is slipping and other center backs are not picked either, then maybe you trade down and he's a guy you want because he gives you something unique. Maybe it's Burks, a converted outside back to center back who's really good on the ball, athletic. Maybe that's what you're looking for. There's a lot of different possibilities with it. Maybe you're looking at one of these guys who's a converted attacker moving into a right back position and you're willing to give them time behind Mcfadden. There's a lot of different ways to play it, but no, I don't think you're going to draft somebody. And remember, it took Miles Robinson 2 years. He didn't play in 2017. He barely played professionally in 2017. He barely played in 2018. He played more games with Atlanta United too. And then it was 2019 where he blossomed. Gressel was a little bit older. Gressel had that time in professional academies in Germany and filled a need on a expansion team. And that's why when I come back to Charlotte, John, like, Charlotte's overall roster build is nowhere near what Atlanta's was. I think what LA's was, what a number of different teams, what Nashville's was coming into the draft in their first year. I think Charlotte really needs a guy who can play minutes this year. And I don't know if that's Bender. I think Charlotte, now the question is Walks and McCoon, are those going to be your 2 guys? McCoon did come up as a defensive midfielder. Does he move into a defense like Kip Keller, who a lot of people think the draft? That's kind of where I'm leaning more because I don't know if Bender's a slam dunk in converting from a playmaker, a central attacking midfielder, a number 10 to more of an 8. That's not an easy conversion. It's a lot easier to be a right winger and convert to a right back or a left winger and convert to a left back. There's more questions with Bender at the pro level for me than a guy like Keller. I think they go center back or they trade down and pick up assets.
And that was what I was thinking. Literally, when you and Dylan were having the conversation in hour number 1 about 1 and 2 through 5, as I'm writing down the notes as you guys are talking, literally I have written down here, and I haven't moved it since 10 o'clock this morning. 1, Charlotte, trade for assets. Literally, that was what I had written down on this piece of paper because you need folks now. And can you put the trust in that number 1 overall selection if you can get more assets that could possibly help you with a roster build that is yielding more questions than answers right now?
Yeah, I think there are players who you could get who would play. I really do. I don't know if they are in the positions that you actually need at the moment. Winger is the one that maybe they surprise us a bit, because there are a couple of wingers in this draft that are very interesting, and they're on Generation Adidas deals. Useni Buddha from Stanford is one. He's projected at number 4 here, so that's not a crazy move, picking the guy who's at 4, picking him 1. I think the idea of like reaching for guys in the MLS SuperDraft, you can throw a little bit out the door, because it's more of a crapshoot than the NFL draft, than the NBA draft, etc. Buddha might be the most dangerous attacking guy in the draft. Now, you would be probably throwing him into the deep end, because he would have to play. You have one winger in Mackenzie Gaines who's a converted forward right now. That's it. We know Miguel Angel Ramirez is going to need wingers who fit what he wants. He needs guys who are active. He needs guys who can, put the other team under pressure in wide positions. Buda's that guy. He's going to need international slot. He's from Burkina Faso. Missed the 2020-2021 season due to injury. Only played 39 games at Stanford. There is a question about if he can jump in right away. Great on the dribble, great 1v1 guy, maybe the most pro-ready attacking guy. If he can jump in right away, he's probably the one who could have the most impact. But can he? Isaiah Parker is another one. Parker is from St. Louis. St. Louis is going to have a slew of guys drafted in the first round. Parker would not need the international slot. He is a lefty, so he'd be on that left side. He's probably out of these guys that would be high in the draft, the furthest away from being a finished product, which is not a good thing for Charlotte to hear, but he might have the highest upside. So it really comes back to what you can get out of this pick and how you can play it. I don't know what direction Charlotte goes. I really do have a lot of questions about what their team is looking like at this point and what direction they're going, because I don't think it's all that clear. Anything else about the super draft that's on your mind, John?
Well, and it goes back to the Charlotte discussion, and it might involve Cincinnati at this point. If Charlotte feels they need bulk, they need assets, they need different ways to bring in players, what is that club that has the assets that can deal with Charlotte to help themselves out, get themselves to number 1 in the order? And who would be the key dance partner, you think, for Charlotte? And I keep looking at Cincinnati.
I think Cincinnati has really assets to give them. Unless they're going to move Zico Bailey with signing Alvis Powell and Ray Gaddis. Zico Bailey, but you have Jalen Lindsey there for Charlotte, so no, you're not going to take that. You're not going to get an attacking player that I think would potentially contribute unless you're going to get a guy who was picked last year in Calvin Harris, who's coming off an injury. I don't think you trade out a number 1 to pick Harris or to get Harris, who was picked later. I don't think there's a guy like that. I don't know. I don't know if there's a real obvious dance partner either. I really don't. Colorado's at 10. Colorado seems like a team that maybe would value this, and they do have a very deep team right now. So if, Charlotte could do a deal with them and add, I don't know, maybe a guy who was a draft pick who was a rookie of the year previously in Shin Yashiki.
Yeah.
Maybe getting somebody like that. I don't know. This is going to be weird. It's going to be interesting. I think it's very hard to predict. So, one thing, just keep in mind, take everything with a grain of salt when you look at these mock drafts and big boards where, guys are all over the place. I think Keller is pretty universally seen as one of the best guys in the draft. Bender, a couple of goalkeepers in Roman Celentano from Indiana and Patrick Schultz from Dallas, or from St. Louis. I think those are the two goalkeepers, along with some of your other Generation Adidas guys, and Keller and Bender that are pretty well established up that high. Let's see. So Kefsey asked about how would you view an Anderson Asayadu draft in retrospect. I mean, it didn't work out because he didn't fit, but you drafted a guy who was a player who really came not out of nowhere, but really improved his stock at the combine and came in hot. You wanted to see what he could bring to the table. You played him with Atlanta United too. I think they made the decision quickly that he wasn't going to be an MLS level player. So they let him go pursue a deal elsewhere. And they also had, and you got to keep this in mind too, I think at Central Mid, they had guys coming up through the academy that needed to play those minutes. If you'd already decided on Anderson that he wasn't going to factor into MLS for you, it didn't make sense to keep playing him, just eating minutes. It didn't make sense. Moving on made the most sense. And Walshara, I mean, I got to push back on this stuff, and I don't know if you're playing contrarian here a little bit. You're not going to downplay a draft pick. You're not going to downplay a move if you're a team. It's disrespectful to the player. It's disrespectful to the individual involved. They told his story about Anderson specifically. It's a great story to tell. He deserved to have his story told. Probably helped him in being on the radar for other teams. I don't think you make a move or you make a draft pick or you do something and say, well, this isn't a big deal, but in case you care, here's the announcement. You can't ever spin it that way. I think it is on people like us, and it is on these conversations to put things in proper perspective to where there is an understanding. Yeah, Atlanta's picking 19. Whoever they pick is probably not going to play significantly in MLS next year. They're probably going to play at the USL level. It might take them time. They might not come good. They might. It is a little bit of a roll of the dice. But yes, whoever Atlanta United picks, they're going to announce that player. They're going to tell that story. They're going to give that player that spotlight that they deserve. They've worked hard to get it. I think the idea of hyping things up internally from a team, and it's kind of the job. You have to announce the moves you make. I don't know how else to really spin it to downplay it coming from the team. I think it's on the rest of us to talk about the proper context and be realistic about expectations. But you announce a guy, you tell their story, and that's it. That's kind of how these things work. I don't know what else to do with it. The draft is supposed to start at 3:00. The pre-show on MLSsoccer.com, digital platforms, Twitter, I think YouTube as well. 2:30 is when the pre-show starts. I do think there will be other trades for picks. I do think there will be guys that, a team will value that's a couple picks away. They'll go ahead and trade up to get them. I think there will be teams that trade down. I think Atlanta absolutely could be a team that trades down. But if center back is where we've all kind of zeroed in as possibilities here for somebody Atlanta United could pick, some other names just to keep in mind that could be around that spot. Philip Quinton from Notre Dame, again, another Notre Dame product, another program that you know pretty well. Another big guy, he's 6'6". More stout than Necita, who I think is faster than Quinton. Notre Dame had a great defense. They had 13 clean sheets last season. So Quinton would be a different kind of big center back than Necita possibly, and a different kind of big center back than I think you have. I think you've got a lot of guys who are faster, which again fits the system you want to play. But hey, if you're looking for somebody who's going to play a specific role, you do want somebody different to a degree. If you're looking for a long-term prospect, somebody who's going to develop into the role, then you're looking for your profile at that position. But if you're looking for a guy in a pinch, you might need something different off the bench. Maybe Quinton could be somebody like that. He's all over the place from anywhere from 12 to 32 when you look at some of the different mocks that are out there. Ryan Saylor is another one, and he's all over the place too. Matt Doyle had him as the number 3 center back in the draft. He has fallen into the teens, according to Ivis Galarcep. Saylor was the Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year at Washington. He's from Colorado initially. He's 6'4". A lot of big center backs in this draft. Yeah. He's a good organizer. He's good on set pieces, good in the air. Is he good enough on the ball? would be the other question. But again, if you're looking for an alternative kind of center back that you might need in a pinch, maybe Sailor could be that guy. Lucas Bartlett is one of the older players in the draft. He's in the 20s to 30s from St. John's. He played at Drake initially. Started at Loyola Chicago, and then went to Drake. Then he got the extra year of eligibility and played a year at St. John's. There's a player from Clemson who's right around 20, Oscar Agren from Sweden. He'd need an international slot. I think that makes it very difficult, but really good on the ball, and he's a strong tackler. That ability on the ball is something Atlanta has always looked for out of their center backs. So could Agren be somebody coming off a college title that Atlanta could look at? Yeah, it's possible. I think the international slot makes it more difficult. I think you're probably looking in a perfect world for a domestic center back who can develop. You're not asking them to play significant minutes in year 1 or year 2. You are asking them to play significant minutes for Atlanta United 2. And you're looking for maybe somebody who gives you something different than what you already have in the core. So we'll see. We'll see. Those are some of the names to keep an eye on. Second round, I mean, it's all over the map. It's going to be dependent on guys who are available. I think maybe you're looking later on in the draft at guys who could be changing positions at the pro level, who maybe are not rated to where they could be rated after they make that conversion. That's the other element to factor in. Thank you, Turner. Oscar was a Mac Herman finalist. That's the Herman Award is the equivalent of the Heisman Trophy in college soccer. All right. So if you guys have questions, we will finish up with questions. We're right about 11 o'clock. I will be tweeting during the draft. If there are significant things happening from Atlanta United, and I don't have any reason to think they are, but again, you get into a draft situation and things get crazy. We might hop on for an impromptu show on Twitch. We'll keep you posted. Make sure you're following us on social media at Soccer Down Here, and we will let you know that. Nigeria and Egypt is about to kick off in AFCON. That's a huge game. Sierra Leone pulled a point against Algeria. That was a big point for them this morning. That was very cool. Scoreless draw for them. Couple of big saves late. Bernd, I don't know if we're going to have a soccer over there this week. It's going to be dependent on everybody's schedules with moving parts. We're not going to have a soccer over there last night with the big game that I was emotionally invested in last night. Sorry. And probably weren't going to have it even if that game wasn't happening, just because I still don't feel great. I have a pretty sore throat. I think it's down to all these crazy weather changes. I haven't really been anywhere, so I don't know if the Omicron found me. I don't know. I don't think so, because I haven't had some of the more significant issues. It's sore throat, it's sinus pressure, it's headache. That's really what I've had a lot of. It's been hard to sleep. Coming into last night, where it was hard to sleep after being very excited about watching a game. So we will try to get a soccer over there on the boards this week, but I can't make any promises at the moment. Ricky, we could use the audio rooms in Discord more. And if you are a subscriber on Twitch or a subscriber on Patreon and you're not on the Discord, but you're hearing this and you're like, what is this Discord people are talking about? Make sure you let me know if you haven't gotten your invite. I think everybody has by now, but if you haven't, let me know. The Watch Along channel has become a great place to be during big games on Discord. And we haven't really used the audio stuff. It is something we could use. And maybe today would be an opportunity to test that a little bit. Chris Ashley, we have not gotten into the kit leak talk. It is very rumor at this point, although it's coming from a source that has been pretty good on these things in the past. Mint is the buzzword, I guess, according to the rumors that are out there. It's different. Mm-hmm. It's very different. It's also very funny with some of the conversation around Charlotte and some of the freaking out from people in Charlotte on the fan side about what Atlanta's secondary kit could look like this year, which kind of adds to the laughter on my end. The secondary kits you can take some more chances with. I do like the idea of getting away from white kit, non-white kit. You can have two different colors and it's completely different than what you have, and it would be a very different look. I really would be curious as the story behind it. I like that kind of stuff. I do like what the inspiration would be, what the conversation would be around it. But be different. Have to see it beyond just what colors we're talking about to get into, like, do I like it or not?
Yeah.
I am very intrigued by the idea. Let's put it that way. I'm very, very intrigued by the ideas. But it's, I don't even know if I could really call it a kit leak at this point. It's a color leak is maybe the best way to put it.
There you go. A design leak.
Yeah, not even a design leak, just a color leak. Like, it's not even like we don't even know what it would look like. We don't know what the shirt would look like. We just know the colors potentially. Again,
in theory, by rumor.
Yeah.
I
don't get, especially the secondary kit. I don't get too like worked up about them because they do change, and they're always going to change. It's the nature of the business. I like that it could be something very different. I like that it could be very different than what we've seen before. I just really hope that we can read the numbers on the back. That would be good. We'll see.
White, gold on white is challenging, sir.
Yeah, I love the shirt. Like that as just a shirt. Like I love the shirt. I love the look of it. As a commentator, the gold numbers got really hard to read. The peach was easier to read, and that was difficult at times. The gold got lost in lights depending on the lighting at certain venues. It was really rough at times.
Yes.
Dawn asks, who do you think will be the number 1 pick in the draft? Ooh, gotta pin me down. I will go different than the others because most people have Keller or Bender. Kip Keller, center back from St. Louis. Ben Bender, central midfielder from Maryland. I'm going to go with Useni Buda from Stanford because I think Miguel Angel Ramirez wants wingers. He needs wingers. He's only got one and on his roster right now. I don't know if Buda is the perfect fit profile-wise for what Ramirez wants out of a winger, but I think he can come in, and you're going to have to make sure he's healthy and all that because he has had some injuries. I think he can come in and play. I think he can come in and have some impact. So that's the direction I would go, Useni Buda, or I would trade down. If you're not sold on him.
That's it for me.
And then it depends on who's drafting, because I think this draft is just so different. It's not about just best available. It is about fit. And whoever trades up is going to have a reason to trade up. They're going to be wanting probably Keller or Bender. And it's just going to depend on what they need and what profile of player they're looking for. That's why. Yes, Chris Ashley, you need your victory lap for your fantasy football championship. That is true. Congratulations.
Yes. Right there with you, brother. Fantasy football champs.
Well, you're in like 57 different leagues, John. So of course you won one.
Second championship in 3 years. Breaking news from Michelle Kaufman out of Miami. Inter Miami defender Ryan Shawcross retiring at 34. Career cut short by a back injury.
Who's playing center back for Miami? Jeez. I mean, I'm not surprised by that because Shawcross, remember, had significant injuries before coming to Miami, had finally gotten healthy and wasn't all that healthy. But just to recap with Miami, so officially at this stage, Leandro Gonzalez Perez is going to spend 2 years with River. Christian McCoon is a Charlotte FC player. Nicholas Figal is rumored to be a Boca Juniors player. Ryan Shawcross is retiring. That leaves Jairo Quinteros, who is a Bolivian national team player who was on loan to Bolivar last year. He's expected to come in and play. And Ian Frey. That's it. Miami is stripping this thing down to the studs and starting over. Now they kind of need to. And I'm with Dylan. I think it is impressive from Chris Henderson to be able to do this because you had some bad contracts. You had some bad fits. You still got to get Matuidi out of there because he's still under contract right now. You're going to have some flexibility, but you're also not even a week away from preseason camp opening. I don't think they have a number of guys from their second team with Fort Lauderdale who are ready to sign MLS deals. So you're going to have to sign a bunch of free agents. You're going to have to go out to the international market and get players. Right now, okay, they've signed Clement Diop. They have 3 goalkeepers. They're fine there. They have Kieran Gibson, Jovan Jones at outside back. That's it. Both are left-sided. They have Quinteros and Frey, assuming Figal goes to Boca, at center back. Probably going to need 3 to 4 more. You've got Gregory, you've got Jean Mota, you've got Mo Adams, you've got Victor Ulloa, Blaise Matuidi. Right now, you added Bryce Duke. All right, you're going to need some help in the central midfield. You've got Robbie Robinson, you've got Felipe Valencia and Edison Ascona, both young and fairly unproven. You're going to need some help on the wing. You've got Gonzalo Higuain, one more year. You've got Ariel Lassiter up top as well. He can play out wide in a pinch, kind of like Robinson can play up top in a pinch. Probably need another forward. So, I mean, at a minimum, just to fill out requirements, I think they need 2 right backs. I think they need at least 3 center backs. I think they need a 10. I think they need at least one more wing option who can start, and probably a backup forward in addition to what they already have.
That's 8 dudes.
It's 8 guys that you need just to start filling out a team.
Mm-hmm.
And at least 1, probably 2, probably 3, maybe 4 need to start.
Okay. So half of the dudes that you need to get need to be in your starting 11.
Whew. It's not going to be easy. Not going to be easy. DM Tim talking about the stuff with the colors. Usually hates the new color design, etc. when they get leaked, but then ends up liking them. I've kind of been that way too. I haven't really hated anything so far. I wondered about the white and gold. I wasn't as sold on it initially, but then seeing it in person, I loved it. I just didn't love it from a commentator perspective. Again, I'm just being selfish about that. I've really grown to love, I've mentioned this before, I've really grown to love the black kit. I liked it when I saw it. I didn't know what to expect when I heard about it. I love it now. I really do. It's one of my favorites. It's just a beautiful look, in my opinion. I'd love to see, even if they wanted to mix it up a little bit, I'd love to see them mix that with red socks occasionally or something. That'd be cool. I love that shirt. Dead again, of course. Yeah, no, I understand. I have been tested before and tested negative. I'm not intending to go anywhere right now, but I will check the lines at the testing places because I'm not really doing anything to worry about it at the moment. And I kind of think I might have had it and just never tested positive for it.
Yeah.
But again, I mean, who knows? Like I'm going to treat it like I'm going to treat it, and I'm going to be super careful whenever I do have to leave the house, which hasn't been often to begin with, and I'm ordering more stuff and all that. So I don't know what we're supposed to do at this point. I don't know the best way to handle this stuff at all anymore because, I mean, you can read all the articles you want about Omicron, and there's a Deltacron, I think somebody said, where it's a combination of the two, and what does that mean? And there's gonna be others. And go back and study the Spanish flu and how that stuff shifted and changed and all of that. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I really don't. I mean, the U.S. men's national team's dealing with it right now, and I mean, people are asking, like, is it better for some of these guys in this preseason camp to have it now and not have it later? Yeah, from a national team perspective, because this is going to wreak havoc on essential World Cup qualifiers in January in this region, in CONCACAF and in CONMEBOL, because players are going to miss games. Players are going to miss games. And look, the conversations come up, and then you have the Liverpool issue with their number of false positives, according to Jurgen Klopp, to the point that clubs are like, hey, we might need to investigate what was going on at Liverpool because they had a League Cup game that was postponed that now they're saying it was false positives. What?
Yeah.
So, like, and I don't know. I mean, I don't know if that was the tests didn't catch the variant. I don't know if that was rapid tests that were then proven false with PCRs. I mean, it's all this stuff is just, it sucks. It absolutely sucks because there's so much unknown on what to do. I mean, I don't say these things to try to tell you how to live your life. I don't. because everybody's got different lives and everybody's got different risks and everybody's got different situations. I mean, understand your own risks. Do everything you can to protect yourself and protect the people around you. I have upgraded from, wearing the cloth masks to wearing a KN95. And that was something I did when this started to shift. I went out and ordered some and got them in. And that's what when I do go out places, because, and this is another thing where I think the communication and I think the explanations need to be better. The initial story about wearing a mask, and I understand very, very early on, there was a concern about there being enough masks. I get that. I know why the messaging was what it was at that point. That's a really important element that people will leave out conveniently depending on agendas. But the idea was wear a mask to protect the people around you. Well, now that conversation has shifted, because the KN95s and I think the N95s as well are there that help protect you and the people around you. There's another layer to it, not literally just of protecting yourself, because a cloth mask doesn't really protect yourself. KN95 will. I'd rather not get it, although I don't know how I'm going to be able to avoid it for the rest of my life. But I'm not like saying, hey, come on, Omicron, come hang out with me.
Yeah.
I'm not doing that. But, I mean, that's this line we all have to walk and figure out, and it sucks. It absolutely sucks. So,
no, and I'll give you full disclosure here. We bought 2 boxes of the KN95s, and there's 20 per. We brought the box with us down here on vacation because we've done the cloth mask thing, and now we've got, the KN95s. We have them here with us for when we go out for whatever we're going to be doing outside of the house, which really isn't going to be a whole heck of a lot. But nevertheless, when you're traveling and you're out and about, we've got we have those masks with us too. And what I've always said, and I've said this for 2 years, I wear a mask to protect you from me.
But I know. But John, that and this is where the communication, it has to get better. And I'm not saying this from you. I understand that. But now that everybody's saying, like, you have to, and I think it's going to be a recommendation here coming up, according to reports that the CDC is going to recommend.
Yeah.
Like, now it's got to do the KN95s or the N95s. That's not about protecting other people.
Yeah,
that's not. Yeah, that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
And it's all lumped into the same. And they've got to delineate better, because when people get confused, and we have this conversation about, soccer on TV and getting into leagues and all that. If people don't have all the information or it's confusing, what do? You don't pay attention.
No, you don't.
You tune it out, because I'm hearing 5 different things. I don't know what any of them mean.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, screw this. Like, that's what happens. So, like, I just really wish they could get that better, so you don't have to do as much research and study and understand. But I recommend you do it right now. If you have to be out, get some KN95s if you can. I got a box of 20 for I think $15 from Amazon.
Yep,
came quick. It's fine. Do what you can, but do it for what your situation is, because, look, I'm lucky. I don't have to go out a ton. That's going to change here pretty soon. But right now I haven't had to. I haven't had to since the season ended. I really haven't. I didn't do anything on New Year's. I haven't gone anywhere to concert or any kind of big public thing, because it's not worth the risk for me at the moment. I was going to go to the United Soccer Coaches Convention in Kansas City here in a couple of weeks. I canceled it. It's not worth the risk for me right now. But I'm lucky in that I can do that. There are people who can't, because of their job, because of just whatever is going on in their life to where they have to be out. So figure out what makes sense for you. Do the best things for you. This is an issue. I hope that what we're starting to learn is that it's an issue with a lot of positive tests, but it's not as much of an issue for the concerns of hospitalizations. It's just the hospitalizations are high because there's so many people getting it.
Yeah.
But if you're getting vaccinated, if you're getting your boosters, generally, and the numbers are backing it up, you're not getting all that sick. I've talked to people who have had it recently who didn't even know they had it. I've talked to people who felt crappy. Talked to people who've said like the worst cold they've ever had in their life. All of it. It's all over the map. Do the best you can. We all are. I just want you to be around to keep listening to the show and keep watching these games and keep getting excited about your college football teams or your MLS teams or your teams in England and all that. Figure out what works for you and do it. But be considerate of the people around you as best you can. But you got to protect your number one first. You just have to. And that's the biggest reason why when the KN95s and this and paying attention to it, I was like, yeah, I'm going to upgrade to that and do it. And they're fine. They're not uncomfortable. They're fine. It's worth it. It is a lot more contagious. Absolutely burned. And that's the thing is some of the explanations with all of it are just not there. And some of it initially, and I understand it, this caught people by surprise. It's brand new. You don't have anything to go on a track record with. I get it. People are playing catch up. I get it. We know more now to, I think, give clearer advice and clearer recommendations. So, yeah, Dead again, this is what sucks. And don't worry about derailing things. This is what we do at this portion of the show where it runs around a ton of different things. And it's not derailing it. This stuff's, I think, an important conversation, just giving you our perspectives on it. I have horrible allergies to begin with. And the weather lately has been the worst possible thing for my allergies because I don't get the pollen stuff. I get the pressure changes, the temperature changes that wreck me, especially with like sinus pressure and with headaches. That's what I get more of. And then I get some of the drainage does happen as my sinuses get messed up, but it's very difficult to tell the difference right now between it. And that's not just for me, that's for a lot of people, between allergy issues and between, COVID issues. So I don't know. Again, I don't know what the best way to handle all this for every single person is. Do the best you can for yourselves. Michael says go anywhere outside the perimeter. Mask wearing drops off significantly. Yeah, inside the perimeter too. Yeah, that's there's different places that you just don't see it. There's places that you see it.
Yeah,
I don't care. I truly don't. I'm not going to go up to somebody and say, you need to put a mask on right now. If I'm running into a store and buying something, I'm not going to do that. I would hope that people would do the same. If that's the way you want to live it, okay, I wouldn't, but I'm not making that choice for you. I do think businesses are going to make choices for their employees, and that is a different conversation than you as an individual. So it's all a mess. I don't know.
No, I mean, I've been in Florida and Alabama a lot the last month, and the boss and I seem to be in the extreme minority of wearing masks in public situations. But that's our choice.
Yeah.
And here in Florida, when I'm in a situation where I'm outside of the house and have to go someplace to run an errand, I'm walking into that establishment and I'm wearing a mask because that's just how I'm wired.
Yeah, it's I don't know. I just again, I think more than anything, I'm trying to stay away from people.
And I do that too. Trust me. I mean, as we do, New Year's Eve for us was as quiet as possible. We didn't mind it. I mean, we were having to deal with some tests and results and things like that in Christmas and before and all that. So coming out of that, the natural inclination for us is just, we're going to be as normal as possible, which for us is basically being hermits, work from home and do our thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's difficult. And yeah, Turner, I mean, the initial guidance about you don't have to wear a mask if vaccinated. Now it's different with the Omicron, and which is different. It wasn't there before. Now it is. Now things have changed. I think when things change, the communication has been difficult. And you also have people, and I fully understand it because I'm fed up with all of it too, because I'm tired of this being the reality we're all dealing with. But yeah, people are fatigued by everything. And some people are just fatigued to the point that they just don't care anymore.
Yeah. Much like you were saying, when you get all these different sources of different information, 5 different ideas, you're going to tune it out. Same thing happens with just general time lapse. You're going to be fatigued by the whole thing.
Yeah, Uncle, on a plane, yeah, that's a completely different conversation for me. If people aren't wearing their mask on a plane and I have to travel on said plane, then yeah, things need to get set. That's a non-negotiable to me. Absolutely. In a large grocery store, no, I'm just going to avoid that person. I'm literally going to, if I'm about to walk down an aisle and I see somebody unmasked on that aisle, I'm going to go down another aisle and work my way back around. Like, that's what I'll do because it's not worth it. But on a plane, absolutely. Yeah, it sucks. But most importantly, protect yourselves, protect the people that you care about. Do your best to think about the world at large, but you got to think about yourself, number one. And if you have to upgrade masks, if you have to rechange or change again or change for the first time or change for the 27th time, individual behaviors and plans and schedules, do what you got to do, because hopefully, given time and in past situations in history, you're getting to that point where things are going to mutate and it's not going to go away and people are going to test positive, and that means they have this virus in them. It doesn't mean that they are deathly ill. Like, there's so many elements to it that are just so complicated and crazy. I do think there comes to a point where we have to do the things that we have to do, and maybe certain parts of the year we're wearing masks in public. Maybe some parts of the year we're not. Maybe certain situations you are, certain situations you're not. Maybe if you're, immunocompromised, you are, and if you're not, you're not. Like, I don't know. I don't know where it goes, but this stuff isn't going to drop off the face of the earth. So be smart about it. Do your research. Understand your risks. Understand your situation. I definitely recommend getting vaccinated and getting boosted. Means you feel bad for a couple of days. If you get a tough recovery from the jab, it's worth it, because you don't want to get sick with it and not be protected. That's just what it comes down to. It does affect the soccer world too. I mean, it does. Like, when we get into these World Cup qualifiers, I'll tell you, it's something you're going to be looking at this. And Bart, I'll go ahead and warn you, because it's probably going to be something you're going to need to talk about on Soccer for US, and maybe write an article about it. You're going to need, where we talk about a roster announcement and you talk about who's playing right now, who's playing well, who scored goals lately, you're going to need to talk about who's recovered from this recently, because those are guys who are probably going to get called up.
Yep.
It's going to be big. Uncle, I hope by the time we get to the World Cup, it's not going to be a circus, but who knows? It could be. World Cup qualifying in a couple weeks is going to be. And guys who have recently recovered from this, that's going to start to become a story, because those players are going to be more likely to get called up. I mean, sure, could they get another breakthrough? Yeah, I guess, but I think the likelihood is incredibly low versus somebody who hasn't had it recently. Serginho Dest has had it. Conrad De La Fuente has had it. Joe Scally had it, missed a game, but now he's back to training. Those are guys that probably going to be automatic. Some of them would be automatics anyway, but they're probably going to be on this next team, because if you get an outbreak going into a World Cup qualifier, I mean, it's going to affect teams that don't think about it. I do think the U.S. is thinking about it. I think having this little bonus conditioning camp is actually helping them think about it. That's something Greg Berhalter was asked about yesterday. I think it's huge, because they're going to be more ready to deal with it than a lot of other national teams, because they're in a camp situation. Guys have arrived, tested positive. They've had to keep them separate. You're going to have to call in more players. And yeah, you're going to have to make sure you prioritize some guys who are at a much lower risk of testing positive and missing games. And those are going to be the guys who have recently recovered from this. That's going to factor into your roster making. It's crazy, but that is going to factor into your call-up strategy for the national teams. And good programs, it will be part of their strategy. Programs that are not maybe as organized, maybe a little more fly-by-night, you're going to see teams call in a bunch of guys. You're going to see teams have guys show up and test positive, and you're going to see teams scramble in critical qualifiers in North and South America. Mm-hmm. It's going to happen. I hope the U.S. isn't one.
Absolutely correct. And it's those programs that are already thinking about it, and they're approaching this in 3 dimensions. Basically, you have different tracks. If this, then what? If this, then what? And you've got to have a plan, but you've got to have a backup plan, and you've got to have backup plans for that, because if something happens, you've got to be prepared for every contingency. And those that are already thinking about it and have the talent pools where they can have access and get all of that stuff squared away, they're going to be the ones that get through this as close to as being as sound as possible as you can get.
It's going to be part of the strategy. Egypt, Nigeria going on right now. That is on BN. BN in Espanol as well. If you have Fanatis, it's on your Fanatis app, fntz.co/soccer down here. It's also on Fubo TV if you have the Spanish language package or probably a sports language package. That game is in the first half right now. More games from AFCON today. Super Draft coverage starts at 2:30 on the MLS channels, 3 o'clock when the actual draft starts. Probably get through all of the picks. We're talking until about 5:30, maybe 6 o'clock. We'll be talking about it in various places. I will be tweeting about it for sure on my Twitter at Longshoe. We'll blast those from soccer down here as well. But I'm sure we'll be going into more detail about it in our Discord for subscribers. Thanks to everybody who has kept that on an auto loop and keep re-upping. Thanks to new subscribers here recently. We really appreciate it. And again, if you're a subscriber on Patreon or on Twitch and you're not in the Discord, please let me know. Send me a message. We'll get you taken care of. One more thing, too. We're doing a few more days on the T-shirt to raise funds for the Soccer Factory in Mayfield, Kentucky. That order is going to get closed out at the end of the day on Friday. It's $20. Shoot us a message, either personally to me or to Soccer Down Here. Let us know what size you want. We'll get you taken care of. You can pay via PayPal. If you need to pay some other way, we'll figure it out. But it's $20. All the proceeds after the cost of the shirt's getting done, all the proceeds are going to the Soccer Factory in Mayfield. And we've had quite a few people already order one. Turner's asking about 2022 Soccer Down Here scarves. We have not gotten into that yet. I wanted to get the Soccer Factory project up and running and done and shipped out before we jump into the scarf conversation. So stay tuned. And we'll get into that probably in the next month. Try to have something around the start of the MLS season. That'll be the goal. Let's put it that way, Turner. Thanks, everybody, for bearing with us today. Sorry if I was a little scatterbrained. I think I was better than Stetson Bennett was on Good Morning America because, whoo,
oh, boy.
Whoo, he looked like he had a night.
Yeah.
I did not have that kind of a night. I just had a long night and was very happy about how things turned out, as I'm sure Stetson is too. But man, looking at that video, hurting. Hurting.
Pierce County represent, brother.
Yeah.
Have a day.
Yeah. Oh, he can have a life. There'll probably be a 30 for 30 or movie or something about the run he has had to win this thing. It's crazy.
Just don't have Zachary Levy star in this one either.
No, we'll go with somebody else. But yeah, amazing story. Yes, Costco creates a Pedialyte at the 120%. Turner.
Kidding.
That is true. All right. Thanks, y'all. Thanks for being part of it. We'll talk MLS SuperDraft the rest of the day on our various platforms. Tomorrow, we'll break everything down, talk about what Atlanta United did. Mike Conti will join us tomorrow as well. Hopefully you will. We'll see you then. Mucha plata, y'all.
Mucha plata.